Genesis Noir is kind of a strange game to describe. It's really not so much a game as an experience. A collection of motifs as a love letter to the film genre of noir, as the title suggests, and strange pseudoscience mumbo-jumbo. I guess you could call the game a point-and-click adventure game, but I think the gameplay even lacks the depth from some of the other point-and-click games that I've played in the past, which is a pretty limited list, mind you. Let's start off with the basics. Genesis Noir is about a jazz singer who gets murdered. You play as a watch salesman who was a love interest to the singer, and you're attempting to catch the killer of the singer. The basic setup is classic noir. A smoky nightclub, and a man in a trench coat wanders into frame. The dame who catches his eye on the stage. The night of romance ending in a murder that needs to be solved. Nighttime neon glints in the darkness of the cold city that surrounds them. Other bullshit like that, you know how it is. The killer is a saxophone player known as Golden Boy, and you have to try and track him down. But rather than doing the usual detective things that might happen in a noir story, you have to travel through space-time itself, all the way back to the Big Bang, a metaphorical representation of the moment that the woman was shot, because guns do go bang, and, of course, the start of the universe itself. And this is where the game kind of goes down the rabbit hole into metaphor. I'll be doing my best to try and break down some of those metaphors, but before I do that, I think the visual style of Genesis Noir should be noted. It has a simple animation style, no dialogue at least until the end of the game, and quick cuts that guide the character and player through the various levels and screens. There are many examples of seamless transitions from locations and time that play beautifully in the game. It has this attention to detail that allows the game to thrive. It is such a curated experience from top to bottom. It feels like you're watching and experiencing a noir film in many ways. The musical cues, the visual distortions and augmentations, and the blending of cutscenes and gameplay all add into this cinematic experience of the game. The actual impact that the player has on the game is pretty minimal, but that fits into the broader context of creation that is happening within the game. That being said, this is still a game that could only be made as a game because of how it draws the player into the experience, rather than the mostly passive experience of watching a film. It makes you notice more on the screen because of the interactivity, and that is the key to the way that the game succeeds. Ironically though, the controls suck major ass for some reason. It was always hard to move the cursor around the screen, and sometimes it was hard to tell if I was even supposed to have a cursor at any given moment. I played the game on Xbox with a controller, and it definitely seemed to be made for mouse and keyboard instead. Luckily, there are not any moments where quick or precise action is required, like there's no death screens or anything like that within this game, so it really doesn't matter too much, but it was definitely annoying. Part of it is that half the time it's a point-and-click adventure game, and half the time it's just a straight adventure game, and you never know when those two things are switching. But back to the more important stuff. All those pesky metaphors. If you want to search for meaning in vague connections, then this game is for you. If you want a straightforward narrative, then maybe not. Let's start off with the beginning of the game, where No Man, the main character, is selling watches and living in a clock tower that was never finished. He is literally selling and attempting to create time. The symbol on his hand that becomes sort of his primary power throughout the game is a watch spring itself, allowing him to jump through cosmic space-time in his journey to find Golden Boy. Time itself was created in the Big Bang, and that is the connection to these watches and time. As you travel through time and space, there are multiple connections to a detective search for a killer in a noir film. The Big Bang is the gunshot that killed the singer, but it's also the name of an album that both artists were performing on. There's a level that talks about the creations of stars, both in the sky, but also referring to the fame and stardom that surrounds the musical artist, and that Golden Boy apparently craves, as one scene later in the game shows where all he wants is applause from someone. The game uses jazz as a backbone, both for the characters and the soundtrack. Jazz music plays as you interact with the environment, and it acts as the background tracks as well. But it also metaphorically fits into the game. Jazz has a sense of free-flowing creation to it. There are rules in most pieces of music, whether it is a key, or a scale, or a tempo that the music is set to. But jazz takes those ideas and bends and distorts them to be something new, that both displays the skill of the artist, but also the ability for music to be something beyond the traditions that music is based in. Within Genesis Noir, that creation is also happening all around you, with plants and life and animals and protozoal ooze all binding together into something more. The creation of jazz is also happening in the physical world all around you, and the rules are being rewritten and broken and remade everywhere. It's a really cool connection between two separate ideas that I never would have made until it was actually in front of my face in this game. This metaphor is also just simply based around creative visualizations. You create a sun out of a sunflower. You connect dots between little atoms to create bacteria or something. But that also acts as the stereotypical moment where a detective is connecting lines of thread or string between ideas to solve a case. You break time with a watch. You use a radio dial to tune into the dark energy to grow a plant. And you have to trim trees to grow them further and higher, as hardship is the only thing that makes evolution possible, which the game later explains throughout the seasons on Earth as well. As far as the science goes in the game, I don't know jack shit about it. It could all be wrong or lies, but it doesn't really matter. The game is not a piece of academic explanation for the beginning of space-time. It's using that as a basis for a creative exploration of noir as a genre. This blending of two items works brilliantly, and has never done before, at least as far as I know. I haven't watched or read or seen every single piece of noir ever. There's also some clear biblical references with a snake in a tree with apples in it. It was a little dumb, but I just wanted to point out that the game is attempting to do something a little bit more with its narrative and visual references. Now, I was wholly enjoying the game, until it started to get into the third act. Eventually, after progressing through the beginning of the universe and the creation of life, we get to the point of human life, and each level is a sort of diorama of one particular person's life and journey. We see a hunter-gatherer kill a deer. We see a Japanese warrior kill an enemy leader. We see a jazz bassist killed by mobsters on a subway platform. And we see a scientist on Mars in the future attempting to create their own black hole via a Hadron Collider thingy. This is where the game starts to go off the rails a little bit. The characters can both see No Man and not see him. And they immediately recognize him as a god of some sort, which leads to some nonsense later on in the game where statues of No Man are erected to praise your wonder. It all sorts to fall apart. The actual side of what's happening just drifts away. I think two things started to happen here that started to affect my enjoyment of the game. Prior to the humans showing up, I felt like I could understand the visual metaphors and puzzles in a broader range of symbolism. But once the people showed up, it just felt random. Additionally, you've seen pretty much everything the game has to offer from a visual and gameplay perspective at this point. Some of the puzzles are slight twists on the others, but at this point you get the game. There's not much new that's being introduced. Now I will say, the level with the scientist on Mars was the most characterization in the entire game. We get to see emotion for the first time from No Man and from another character. It added in some humor and relatability, and it did so much better than the other levels of featuring these vignettes of humans throughout time that it made the other ones look bad in comparison. I finally understood what they were trying to do with these levels, which was to connect No Man in a cosmic sense to all people throughout time and space, regardless of gender, technological advancement, language, race. It was very deep. To me, the only one that actually landed and seemed like a connection actually existed at all was the scientist on Mars. The others, it was just random little stories. And then, the game goes entirely off the rails. I'm talking full-blown chaos here. So, I'm going to do my best to explain it, and I think I'm going to fail, because trying to explain it makes less sense than if you see it. But anyway, so you create a black hole with the Hadron Collider from the science lady on Mars. You realize that you need to destroy the universe in order to start a new one over again. But then people evolve into floating white spacemen who are actually all the people you have met combined together, like the Japanese samurai warrior, the jazz bassist, the hunter-gatherer, and the science lady. And then they throw you into the black hole to stop you. So you're stuck within this black hole for an undetermined amount of time until you get back out. And there's a giant spaceship built in your likeness. And then you kiss the white spaceman, who's all the people combined. And then you do a dance routine through space while farting out rainbows and seeing the alternate choices of the 4 characters that we had seen earlier. This was some absolute stupid-ass nonsense. It was an acid trip in the middle of a noir game that so tonally changed the fundamental backbone and visuals of the game that it simply did not fit in any way into what had been happening before or after. It is so disconnected from the plot, with Golden Boy, the one and only antagonist, simply disappearing for a long stretch of time. It removes the aesthetic of the noir. It changes the soundtrack into like an EDM dance music pop song. It changes the controls of the game, and it changes the tone. Rather than being this gritty exploration of a murder, we're now space gods performing a dance routine and shitting out babies. What? I don't understand why somebody would choose the creative pathway that led to this portion of the game. And if I'm being totally honest, it ruined the whole experience for me. My entire disposition changed during the scene to one of confusion. I hated it so much. From the choice to include spoken dialogue, to the shitty song that loops over and over again in the background, to the heavy-handed recitation of, "You don't have to save everyone," clearly setting up a binary choice for the end of the game. Even at the end of the game, when you are shown the full plot line of Golden Boy and the singer and No Man, it just made me angry because of how shallow the conflict actually was. Like, it was just a case of rejected love that got Golden Boy mad. All this space bullshit all led back to it just being a bad breakup. What the actual fuck? That is the depth of this game at its core. Something that happens to kids in middle school. Finally, spoilers. I guess I already spoiled a ton of stuff, so sorry. You are given a choice to save the woman at the end of the game or walk away. Your space boyfriend offers this choice to you. For me, it was an automatic, no questions asked decision. I left her behind in a second. I never understood the connection between the woman and No Man as anything other than a shallow physical attraction, because that's the only thing that is harped on over and over and over again throughout this entire game. I mean, it seems like No Man was a fan of hers before she even came into his life, so there's kind of that weird power dynamic at play before any of the actual plot actually happens. There's very little reason to care about her that's given at all, so why would you choose to save her? The best thing to do is nope your way out of there and be on your merry little way. So that's exactly what I did. This grounds the game back into one single timeline and setting. It returns things back to the normal framing of the entire journey you went on as something simply within the mind of No Man, as he chooses to either enter the room or leave it. Basically, it was all just a dream. Or a multiverse distortion of space-time or something. Fuck! I hate that shit so much. I watched the other ending on YouTube, and either way, the singer still dies. So, that part is at least nice. The only difference is if you bring your space boyfriend with you or not. Someone phases them into Earth in your timeline. From a tonal perspective, it's the happy ending. No Man ends with a friend. But it's also pretty dumb and makes absolutely no sense, so really doesn't make that much of a difference. Both endings are pretty close to each other in broad strokes. Either No Man is alone, or No Man has like a totally made up space boyfriend. What? I hate them both. I hate this game. I think that all it had going for it is just totally destroyed as it attempts to go deeper and deeper into this nonsense space-time bullshit. It attempts to have heavy-handed lessons of universality thrown in there, and it was just not fun to experience. I hated it so much. This is especially sad because I thought the beginning of the game was really amazing, both visually, sonically, and thematically. The last part of the game really just ruins the whole thing for me. I appreciate the creative risks that this game took, but not at the expense of the first half of the game. I wish they had come up with a simpler ending rather than what they did, but hey, I guess that's just how it goes. All in all, I cannot recommend this game because of the last hour. It literally made me so confused and then angry that I don't want other people to experience that. I like that game developers are trying weird shit, but it should be weird shit within the tonal space of the game, and Genesis Noir fails spectacularly on this point. Play it if you want to, I guess, but I wouldn't if I were you. Bye.